A cold night. A single mother with nowhere to go, sleeping at a silent bus stop while holding her little son tightly in her arms. Cars passed. People glanced and moved on, until one stranger suddenly stopped, stepped out, and walked toward her. What he did next will leave you in tears. Stay tuned because you are about to watch a beautiful story and find out how it ended. Hello family, welcome to Tales by King. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. The night air was cold and restless. A soft wind moved across the quiet streets, carrying small pieces of paper and dry leaves along the road. The bright city that was usually filled with noise had grown silent. Most shops were closed, and only a few cars passed by from time to time. At the far corner of a nearly empty bus stop sat a young woman named Rachel, holding her 5-year-old son, Daniel, close to her chest. A small travel bag rested beside her feet. It was the only thing she owned now, a few clothes, some documents, and the little money she had left. Rachel's eyes looked tired. The long day had taken every bit of strength from her. Just hours earlier, she had stood in front of her apartment door, begging her landlord for a little more time to pay the rent. She had explained that she was still searching for work and promised to pay soon. But the landlord had only shaken his head and locked the door firmly. "Business is business," he had said coldly. Rachel remembered standing there for several minutes after he left, staring at the closed door, not knowing where to go. Her son had held her hand quietly, not fully understanding what was happening, but sensing that something was wrong. Now they were at the bus stop because it was the only place with a small roof over their heads. Daniel rubbed his sleepy eyes and looked up at her. "Mommy, are we traveling somewhere?" he asked in a weak voice. Rachel forced a gentle smile, even though her heart felt heavy. "Not tonight, sweetheart. We're just resting a little. Will we go home later?" he asked again. Rachel paused for a second. She did not want to lie, but she also did not want to frighten him. She softly kissed his forehead and said, "Yes, we will find a home soon. I promise." Daniel trusted her words and slowly rested his head on her shoulder. The cold wind blew again, and Rachel noticed Daniel shivering slightly. Without thinking twice, she removed her thin sweater and wrapped it carefully around him. She was left wearing only a light blouse, but she did not mind. Her son's comfort mattered more than her own. She looked around the empty street. A few people passed in the distance, but no one paid attention to them. Rachel had once dreamed of giving her son a peaceful life, a small apartment filled with laughter, warm meals every evening, and bedtime stories before sleep. Life had been difficult since her husband died 3 years earlier, but she had worked hard to stay strong. Losing her job 2 months ago had changed everything. Every small saving she had slowly disappeared, until there was nothing left. Daniel's breathing became slow and steady as he fell asleep in her arms. Rachel adjusted her sitting position on the metal bench and held him closer to keep him warm. The bench felt cold against her back, and her feet ached from walking all afternoon, but she did not complain. She had learned to endure pain quietly. For a moment, she lifted her eyes to the dark sky. A few faint stars were visible between the clouds. She whispered softly, almost like a prayer, "God, please just help me find a way. My son deserves better than this." Her eyelids began to feel heavy. Exhaustion slowly took over her body. She tried to stay awake, afraid that something might happen while they slept outside, but the long day had drained her completely. Carefully, she leaned against the bench, making sure Daniel remained safely wrapped in her arms. Within minutes, both mother and child had fallen asleep at the silent bus stop, a tired woman and her little boy, resting under the dim streetlight, not knowing that across the road, someone sitting inside a parked car had quietly noticed them. Across the quiet road, a black sedan stood still with its engine running softly. Inside the car sat Michael Carter, a well-known businessman who had just finished a long evening meeting. He was tired and ready to return home, but something outside the window had caught his attention. Under the dim streetlight, he noticed the woman sleeping on the bench, holding a small child tightly in her arms. At first, he thought they were simply waiting for a late bus. But the longer he watched, the more he realized something was not right. The small bag beside the bench, the thin clothing, and the way the woman wrapped herself around the child, as if protecting him from the cold, made him understand that they were not just travelers. They had nowhere else to go. Michael leaned slightly forward, his eyes still fixed on them. "How long have they been there?" he asked his driver quietly. I noticed them when we stopped at the traffic light, sir, the driver replied. Maybe they arrived not long ago. Michael remained silent for a moment. He had seen many difficult situations in life, but something about this one touched him deeply. Perhaps it was the way the child slept peacefully, trusting his mother, or the way the woman looked exhausted even while sleeping. Wait here, Michael finally said. He opened the car door slowly and stepped out into the cool night air. The street was calm, and his footsteps were soft as he walked toward the bus stop. He did not want to frighten them. As he approached, Rachel suddenly moved slightly, sensing someone nearby. Her eyes opened quickly, and she held Daniel closer to her chest, her face filled with caution. I'm sorry, Michael said gently, raising his hands slightly to show he meant no harm. I didn't mean to scare you. Rachel looked at him carefully. His calm voice and respectful distance made her relax a little, but she was still unsure. It's okay, she replied softly. Michael glanced at the sleeping boy and then back at her. Are you waiting for a bus this late? He asked kindly. Rachel hesitated. She had learned that telling strangers about her struggles sometimes brought judgment instead of help. We're just resting, she answered quietly. Michael nodded slowly, understanding that she did not feel comfortable speaking at first. It's very cold tonight, he said. Do you have somewhere to stay? Rachel looked down at Daniel for a moment. The truth felt heavy in her chest. She could continue pretending, or she could finally admit that she needed help. After a short silence, she whispered, No, we lost our apartment today. Michael's expression changed. He did not show shock, but his eyes softened with concern. I see, he said gently. Rachel quickly added, It's okay. We'll figure something out tomorrow. Michael stood quietly for a few seconds, thinking carefully. He did not want to pressure her, but he also knew leaving them there for the night would be dangerous, especially for the child. I know a safe guest house nearby, he said calmly. It belongs to my company. You and your son can stay there tonight, rest properly, and decide what to do tomorrow. No pressure, no cost. Rachel looked surprised. Why would you do that for us? Michael gave a small, sincere smile. Because sometimes people just need someone to help them stand again. Rachel studied his face for a moment. She saw no impatience, no hidden intention, only quiet kindness. She looked down at Daniel, who was still sleeping peacefully, and realized she could not let pride keep her son in the cold all night. After a deep breath, she nodded slowly. Thank you, we will come. Michael gently signaled his driver, who quickly stepped out to help carry the small bag. Carefully, Rachel lifted Daniel in her arms and followed them toward the waiting car, still unsure of what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time that night, she felt a small sense of hope begin to rise in her heart. The car moved quietly through the calm streets while Rachel held Daniel gently on her lap. He remained asleep, his small hands resting against her arm. Rachel looked out of the window, watching the passing lights, still trying to understand what was happening. Only an hour ago, she had been sitting at a cold bus stop, unsure of where the next morning would find her. Now she was inside a warm car, heading somewhere safe. Michael sat quietly in the front seat, giving her space so she would not feel uncomfortable. After a few minutes, he spoke softly. The guest house is not far from here. You and your son will be able to rest well tonight. Rachel nodded. Thank you. I don't know how to repay this kindness. Michael turned slightly and smiled. Sometimes the best repayment is simply standing up again when life pushes you down. Soon, the car entered a peaceful compound with bright security lights. A neat building stood at the center, surrounded by small trees and clean walkways. The security guards greeted Michael respectfully and opened the gate immediately. Rachel noticed the way they spoke to him and realized he must be an important person, though he had never tried to show it. The driver stopped the car in front of the guest house entrance. One of the staff members quickly came forward and opened the door for Rachel. She stepped out carefully, still holding Daniel, while the driver carried their small bag behind her. Inside, the building felt warm and welcoming. Soft lights shone from the ceiling, and the air smelled fresh and clean. Rachel had not been inside such a comfortable place for a long time. A staff member politely handed her a key card and guided her toward a room on the first floor. Michael stopped near the hallway entrance. This room is prepared for you. There is food inside, clean clothes, and everything you may need for the night, he said kindly. Please rest well. Tomorrow morning, I will return so we can talk calmly about what you would like to do next. Rachel's eyes became slightly wet. You have already done too much, she said softly. Michael shook his head gently. No, Everyone deserves at least one moment when life gives them a helping hand. Rachel thanked him again, then entered the room. The door closed quietly behind her. For a moment, she simply stood there, looking around in disbelief. The room was simple but comfortable. 2 clean beds, warm blankets, a small table with hot food, and fresh towels neatly arranged. She carefully laid Daniel on the bed. As soon as he touched the soft mattress, he moved slightly and smiled in his sleep, still unaware of the long day that had passed. Rachel covered him with the blanket and gently brushed his hair back from his forehead. Then she sat at the edge of the bed and allowed herself to breathe slowly for the first time in hours. A deep sense of relief filled her chest. She had spent so many nights worrying about what tomorrow would bring, but tonight, at least, her child was safe. After eating a small portion of the warm meal left for them, she washed her face and changed into the simple clothes provided. The warmth of the room slowly relaxed her tired body. Before turning off the lights, she looked at her sleeping son again and whispered quietly, "Things will get better. I promise." That night, Rachel lay down beside Daniel, and both of them slept deeply. Not on a cold bench under the streetlight, but in a safe room where peace finally replaced fear, even if only for a little while. Morning came gently. Soft sunlight slipped through the curtains, warming the quiet room. Rachel opened her eyes slowly and sat up, confused for a second. The bed felt too soft. The air smelled clean. Then she remembered everything: the bus stop, the cold, the stranger, the guest house. She quickly turned to Daniel. He was still asleep, lying on his side with the blanket pulled up to his chin. For the first time in many days, his face looked calm. No fear. No stress. Just a child enjoying proper rest. Rachel's throat tightened. She placed one hand over her mouth to stop herself from crying out loud. She had been so strong for so long, but moments like this made her feel everything at once: pain, relief, and deep gratitude. She carefully got out of bed and walked to the small bathroom. She washed her face, brushed her teeth, and stared at herself in the mirror. Her eyes looked tired, but something else was there too: hope. After she finished, she returned to wake Daniel gently. "Daniel," she whispered, touching his shoulder softly. "Wake up, baby." Daniel stretched his arms wide and yawned. Then he sat up and looked around the room. "Mommy, where are we?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. Rachel smiled and sat beside him. "We are in a safe place. Remember the kind man from last night? He helped us." Daniel blinked slowly, then his face brightened. "The man with the nice voice?" "Yes," Rachel laughed softly. "That's him." A knock sounded on the door. Rachel's heart jumped, but she quickly calmed herself and opened it carefully. A staff member stood outside with a breakfast tray: warm tea, bread, eggs, and fruit. "Good morning, Ma," she said politely. "This is for you and your son." Rachel's eyes widened. "Thank you so much." When the staff left, Daniel smiled in excitement. "Food." Rachel laughed again, though her eyes were still wet. She watched her son eat happily and felt a strange mix of emotions. She was grateful, but she also felt embarrassed. She did not like depending on others. She wanted to stand on her own feet again. As they finished eating, another knock came, this time softer and familiar. Rachel opened the door and saw Michael standing there. He was dressed simply today, not like a man trying to show off. He greeted her with a calm smile. "Good morning, Rachel. How did you sleep?" Rachel stood up straight, holding her hands together. "Good morning, sir. We slept well. Thank you for everything." Michael looked at Daniel, who stood behind his mother's leg, shy but curious. "Hello, young man," Michael said warmly. Daniel looked up. "Good morning, sir." Michael smiled. "I'm glad you're feeling better today." He then turned back to Rachel. "Can we talk somewhere quiet? Maybe in the sitting area downstairs?" Rachel nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." A few minutes later, they sat in a small lounge area. It was quiet, clean, and peaceful. Michael did not rush her. He spoke gently, like someone who truly cared. "I want to understand what happened," he said, "so I can know the best way to help." Rachel took a deep breath. Her voice shook a little at first, but then the words began to flow. She told him about her life. She spoke about losing her husband when Daniel was still a baby. She talked about how she used to work at a small office as a receptionist and how she managed to pay rent and feed her child. She explained how her company reduced workers, and she was one of the people laid off. She tried small jobs, cleaning homes, washing clothes for people, selling snacks sometimes, but it was never stable. The rent kept increasing. The bills kept coming. And yesterday, Rachel said quietly, looking down, everything finally crashed. Michael listened without interrupting. His face remained calm, but his eyes showed respect. He was not looking at her like a helpless woman. He was looking at her like a strong mother who had fought hard. When she finished, Rachel wiped her eyes and quickly added, "I am not lazy, sir. I have been trying. I really have." Michael nodded firmly. "I can see that. A lazy person would have given up long ago. You didn't." Rachel looked surprised. No one had spoken to her like that in a long time. Michael leaned back slightly and said, "Rachel, I don't just want to help you for one night. I want to help you stand again." Rachel's chest rose and fell slowly. "How?" Michael's voice remained gentle, but confident. "My company has a building nearby. We have a small team of cleaners and support staff. We need someone responsible to supervise the work, someone who understands effort, time, and discipline." Rachel's eyes widened. "Me?" "Yes," Michael replied. "You. But not because I pity you. Because I believe you can do it." Rachel swallowed hard. "Sir, I don't even have proper clothes. I don't have transport money. And my son." Michael raised his hand slightly. "One step at a time. If you agree, we will arrange everything. You will start as an assistant supervisor first, so you can learn properly. And Daniel, we will also help you find a good school close to the area." Rachel sat still, her mind racing. It sounded too good to be true. Her voice came out small. "Why are you doing this?" Michael's eyes softened. "Because I once had someone help me when I was young. I never forgot that. And because last night, I saw a mother protecting her child in the cold. That kind of love deserves a chance." Rachel's lips trembled. Tears gathered in her eyes again, but this time they were not only tears of pain. They were tears of relief. She slowly nodded. "Yes, I will do it. I will work hard. I won't disappoint you." Michael smiled. "Good. Then today is the beginning of a new chapter for you." Rachel looked down at her hands. They were shaking slightly. She was still afraid, because life had disappointed her before. But deep inside, she also felt something she had not felt in a long time. A real chance. And she did not know it yet, but the next few days would test her strength, and also reveal something shocking about Michael that would make her even more confused about why he chose to help her. Rachel held Daniel's hand tightly as she walked out of the guest house that afternoon. Her heart was still beating fast. Everything felt unreal. The offer of a job, the promise of stability, and the kindness she had received from a man who did not even know her before that night. Michael stood near the entrance, speaking with one of the staff members. When he saw Rachel, he smiled warmly. "Are you ready?" he asked. Rachel nodded. "Yes, sir. I am ready." Within the next few days, things began to change quickly. Michael kept his word. Rachel was given simple work clothes, transport support, and proper training at the company building. At first, she felt nervous, afraid of making mistakes, but she worked carefully and followed every instruction with seriousness. The workers under her supervision soon noticed her dedication. She treated everyone with respect and made sure every task was done properly. Daniel was enrolled in a nearby school, and every morning he left home with a bright smile, proudly telling his classmates that his mother had a big job. Rachel would watch him walk through the school gate and silently thank God for the chance she had been given. Weeks turned into months. Rachel's confidence grew stronger each day. Her supervisors praised her effort, and the company management began to trust her more. She saved part of every salary carefully and eventually rented a small but neat apartment for herself and Daniel. It was not large, but it was filled with peace, laughter, and the warm feeling of a fresh beginning. One afternoon, Michael invited all company staff to the annual appreciation event. Rachel almost refused at first because she felt shy attending such gatherings, but her colleagues encouraged her to go. The event hall was beautifully decorated, filled with lights and smiling faces. Rachel sat quietly at the back, not expecting anything special. Daniel sat beside her, excited by the music and decorations. After a few speeches, Michael walked onto the stage with a microphone. The room became silent. "Tonight," he began, "I want to talk about something very important. Success is not only about building companies or making profits. True success is about changing lives when you have the opportunity to do so." He paused, then looked toward Rachel. "Some months ago, I met someone at a bus stop late at night. She was tired, but she had not given up. She was protecting her child and still hoping for a better tomorrow. Today, That same woman is one of the most hard-working and responsible people in this company. The spotlight slowly turned toward Rachel. People around her began clapping loudly. Rachel's eyes widened in surprise as her colleagues smiled and encouraged her to stand. Daniel held her hand proudly. Michael continued, "Rachel, please come forward." With trembling steps, Rachel walked to the stage. Her heart beat loudly, and tears filled her eyes. She had never stood in front of so many people before. Michael handed her a small envelope and said gently, "This is not charity. This is recognition. Your strength, your dedication, and your courage remind us all that when someone is given a chance, they can rise higher than anyone expects." Rachel opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a certificate of promotion and a housing support document from the company, assistance that would help her secure a better, long-term home for herself and her son. She could not hold back her tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Michael smiled. "You earned it." Daniel ran onto the stage and hugged his mother tightly. The audience applauded even louder as Rachel bent down and kissed his forehead, tears of joy falling freely now. Later that night, as Rachel and Daniel stood outside their new apartment building, Daniel looked up at her and asked, "Mommy, are we really living here now?" Rachel smiled and nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. This is our home." Daniel laughed happily and ran toward the entrance, while Rachel stood for a moment, looking up at the night sky. It was the same sky she had once stared at from the cold bus stop, whispering a desperate prayer. But tonight was different. Tonight, her heart was full of peace. She finally understood something simple and powerful. Sometimes life changes not because of miracles falling from the sky, but because one kind person chooses to help, and one brave person chooses not to give up. And the night she slept at the bus stop quietly became the beginning of a beautiful life she once thought she would never have. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you find this story worth watching. If you do, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories. Like, comment, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thanks for watching.